Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're streaming the show on the app of either of those two radio stations. I don't think it's possible to listen on both simultaneously, but I encourage you to try. Of course, you can also watch the show today and every day anywhere you scroll at Extra Sports 1300, at 740 KVOR, or if you follow me on social media, I'm at GingerWatch on Instagram, at Gingerly Tweets on X. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics throughout the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show, or if you are watching the live stream, feel free to drop a comment right where you are at. Last night, draft night, felt like so many nights for the Denver Nuggets. There was a fair amount of excitement and anticipation. Nuggets, it feels like they haven't had a first-round pick in a while. It's only been a couple of drafts, but still feels like longer than that. And knowing that this team must improve if they are going to get back to being a championship contender. So I think they had the 26th pick. I mean, it's not like they had a chance at Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, or AJ DeBonsta. But still, anticipation, some excitement. And you waited, and the time finally came. You had to wait a little bit longer because Adam Silver wasn't coming out, and you were waiting, and then you found out, even after the Nuggets made their pick, that they were actually trading that pick to San Antonio. So it matches up with so many nights lately with the Denver Nuggets in that there is excitement and then ultimately disappointment. And you're left scratching your head as to why this happened. So Taryn Reed, we will look back fondly in his 30 seconds as a member of the Denver Nuggets. But I don't hate the move here by the Denver Nuggets in a vacuum. This draft, as much as everyone was touting the depth in it, the depth didn't go to pick 26. Okay, there are archetypes of players that you might be interested in if you are a Nuggets fan. Darren Reed being one of them, rim protector, rebounder, a big guy. I was texting with somebody last night, and they were asking me if there's anybody good left. And I said, not really, but draft the tallest player available. And the Nuggets kind of did that, but then they traded him to San Antonio. So it wasn't, I can't sit here and point out the flaw of Calvin Booth's thinking when he was the general manager of relying on guys drafted in the late 20s in an NBA draft being able to sustain the Nuggets championship window and then get too torn up about the Nuggets passing on a guy at 26. Okay, so whoever they were able to get was probably not going to be a significant piece of the team next year. So you move back, you get a couple of second-round picks, and we'll see if they do something tonight. But the second-round picks, these are prime contract dumping currency. Right? You get these second-round picks, and you can entice a team to take on more salary than they're giving up. So either that makes up the difference in a Christian Brown trade or a Cam Johnson trade, or it just entices the team taking those guys on to just take the entirety of the contract, which is going to be very difficult to do because there are fewer teams remaining with any kind of cap space. But that's why you have second-round picks. Right? You can also use them to go the other way and get, a guy that kind of is surplus to requirements on another team. And you just say, hey, here's a second-round pick. We'll take this guy. Neither of which should be things that get you super excited if you're a Nuggets fan, but they are important currency to have. And the Nuggets got rid of all of them. They had none of these, which is part of the problem and part of the flaw in the way they've been going about their business recently, is that they don't have picks, first or second round. So I understand why the Nuggets did what they did last night. No matter who they took, I was not going to sit here and say, okay, this is the missing piece. Here we go. Let's run it back. It was never going to be the case. So many guys were off the board at that point. I don't have an issue with it, with the Nuggets doing it. But now they need to take those second-round picks and do something with them. And do something that isn't dumping salary. Okay, I know that's one of the uses. If you want to use it to bolster a trade, that's pretty close. Maybe the other team's taking on a little bit more salary. If you want to use it to kind of grease the wheels a little bit, that's fine. But what you don't want to see is the Nuggets packaging Cam Johnson with the second-round pick to get the Chicago Bulls to just take on his salary, because ultimately that means that the Nuggets are worse. So uneventful, not exciting, all around lame, but the Nuggets could and should use these second round picks to try and find a way to remake their team and not just use them to dump salary, which in the back of my mind, I hear a voice that's yelling at me. They're going to use it to dump salary, but we'll wait and see. They needed second round picks. Every NBA team needs second round picks. The Nuggets got a couple, and all they passed on was a guy that you would go, I mean, they had Deron Holmes. And I'm not holding up Deron Holmes as the be-all, end-all. I'm just saying, like, they got a guy like him. Right? Guy that's going to be near the end of the bench, who we're going to be discussing, why doesn't this guy get more minutes? He has one good night, and it's this guy should be a part of the rotation. And we've done this with Jalen Pickett. We've done this with all of these guys that the Denver Nuggets have drafted over the last few years. But here's the frustrating part of it, if you're a Nuggets fan. You watched specifically the Oklahoma City Thunder go and get that big kid out of Michigan to pair with Chet Holmgren to defend not just Victor Wembanyama. I know that's where everyone's mind has gone, is how do you defend Wemby? But it's also to defend Nikola Jokic. We can't forget that. So now the Thunder had one 7-footer that talented, absolutely, you didn't really fear him on the defensive end of the floor. And we know what Wemby did to Chet Holmgren. But now you got another 7-footer. And now you start thinking back, remember what Minnesota did and what Minnesota did with Kat and Rudy Gobert, what the Lakers did with Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. Now, neither Chet Holmgren nor this guy they drafted out of Michigan, are that caliber of player right now, but it's more big bodies. It's 6 fouls, however you want to look at it. But the Oklahoma City Thunder last night got better. A little bit better? Sure. But that's a little bit more added to the margin that exists between the Denver Nuggets and Oklahoma City Thunder. And you get the 2 second-round picks in the trade from San Antonio, who now also has more big men. They drafted Acquaintance out of Kentucky as well last night. So they added 2 big men to go with Wemby. So 2 teams that the Nuggets are looking up at right now got a little bit better, separated themselves a little bit more from the Denver Nuggets, and the Nuggets did nothing, which just puts more pressure on them this offseason to make something happen. I don't know what was available to them. I can't imagine that they were in any real position to trade way up in the draft. But the fact of the matter is, you don't even come away with a player. You have 2 second-round picks, and I don't know if you've looked at the big board. That for tonight in the second round, there's a couple of guys that you may know, Braden Smith being one of them, the NCAA's all-time assist leader. The guy's shorter than me. So it's like, well, there's the ball handling, certainly, but the size worries you going up against a team like, say, Minnesota. So I don't know that Braden Smith is going to be a fix for the Denver Nuggets either. So it's really what they do with these 2 second-round picks. That is going to be the lasting question out of this NBA draft. But definitely the continuation of Nug life over the past couple of seasons. You're sitting, waiting, and then disappointment. And then nothing happens. Except Josh Kroenke looked upset. Did you see that? Where they showed the Nuggets draft room, and Josh Kroenke looks like he's getting angry. Now, I think what that was we traded the pick. Why are you showing us? That's what I interpreted it as. I don't think he was getting mad at anybody in the draft room. It wasn't Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy in the Warriors draft room. Didn't look that way. It just looked like he's like, what do you want us to do? We just traded the pick. And they're all clapping. And then moments later, we find out they traded the pick. So overall, pretty much a big fat nothing burger for the Denver Nuggets, which I hate to be this way, but it does seem like a harbinger of what is to come. A lot of noise going on in the NBA right now. Not a lot of it in the Nuggets' direction when it comes to Jaylen Brown, when it comes to some of these other significant players that might be on the move. But, well, I don't want to say but because I really think it's adding to it. There's another development today, another piece of news that the Lakers have signed Austin Reeves to a max contract. Okay, and the Lakers are not one of those teams that are separating themselves from the Denver Nuggets. They have to catch the Denver Nuggets. So that's not what this is about. When the news initially broke, there were a lot of Nuggets fans on social media going, well, that takes them out of the Peyton Watson sweepstakes. They just signed Austin Reeves to a max deal. Not so fast, my friend. Remember that Austin Reeves was making $20 million last year. So you take the 20 and you add another 21 for next year. And the Lakers still have, let me do the math real quick, $59 million in cap space. They can still go after Peyton Watson if they so choose. I don't think that's their top priority because they need a center. And there are some rumors today going around. I don't know if they're rumors. I think somebody posed a hypothetical to Brian Windhorst today. The trading LeBron for Jared Allen. And Windhorst was like, yeah, they would do that, the Lakers. So it's not a rumor necessarily. It's just Brian Windhorst knowing the Lakers' mindset, but I could have told you that. They need rim protection. They need a rim-running big man to play with Luka and Austin Reeves. Jared Allen will be a perfect fit. So that's where their top priority. They got to address that, but this does not take them out of the Peyton Watson sweepstakes. Okay, they are still a threat. Brooklyn, not a threat anymore. It doesn't appear to be. Chicago could still be. And those are just the names of teams that we have heard. Who knows if anyone is lying in the weeds to steal away Peyton Watson. But that's not really the first question that you have to ask with Peyton Watson, is it? It's what if the Nuggets are really willing to or wanting to bring back Peyton Watson, how are they going to do it? Are they going to be willing to go in the second apron to re-sign Peyton Watson? I don't think there's any chance they'll do that. And the belief is they don't even want to be in the tax anymore. So that's going to require even more roster movement to be able to sign Peyton Watson to a contract. I have no doubt that the Nuggets would like to keep Peyton Watson, so that's not the question. The question is, will they be able to, with their current cap situation, and will they be able to, if their goal before everything else is to shed payroll? So if you add all of that up, what you get is the Nuggets are no closer to the Spurs or the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we are no closer to knowing what this Nuggets roster is going to look like next year. So I hope you enjoyed, videos without sound of Dirk Nowitzki and really overall quite poor and NBA draft broadcast. It was kind of a waste of a night. I'll just call it what it was. It was a waste of the night. We didn't get any more movement after the Giannis trade. Jaylen Brown's still a Boston Celtic. A waste of a night. But if you're a Nuggets fan, you might be kind of used to this by now. 719-24-7. 13-13, second round of the draft, which the Nuggets currently have a pick in. Stay tuned. But they do have a pick tonight pretty early on after 6 o'clock. 719-24-7, 13-13, more Drive Time Sports after this. Is somebody going to let Joe Sakic know that he's allowed to trade with other general managers other than Chris McFarland? Like, I hope he's going to expand his phone list over this offseason, because there are only so many trades that Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland can make to get the Avalanche to where they want to be next year. Another one, if you recall, the Avalanche traded Ross Colton to Nashville. First move that Chris McFarland makes as the head of hockey for Nashville. And basically a salary dump. And now, moments ago, breaking news, the Avalanche trade another bottom six player. This one, you might feel some kind of way about. Jack Drury is going to Nashville, along with Chase Bradley, who's in the Avs minor league system, and they're giving up a third-round pick in 2029, which who knows if the NHL will even exist in the year 2029. And then the Avs in return will get Zachary Leroux and Fedor Svechkov. Don't worry, you shouldn't know who they are. Leroux is a 2021 first-round pick for Nashville that has yet to pan out, so kind of a Joe Sakic special there. And then Svechkov had marginal numbers in 70 games played this year for the Nashville Predators, but could be an out-and-out replacement for Jack Drury, potentially. So it's not a move of great significance, but Jack Drury, who had endeared himself well to Avalanche fans, kind of being the other guy in the Mikko Rantanen deal, right? Marty Necas was the headliner, and then they got Jack Drury. But remember, Jack Drury had the goal in Game 5 against Minnesota that made it 3-2. And you know how that turned out. And then he had the breakaway goal against Carter Hart in Vegas in Game 3, where you go, okay, Avs might get back in this series. They did not. But at the time, it was a pretty dope goal from Jack Drury. But the reason why this is a more significant trade than I think Ross Colton is just because of how much importance Jared Bednar and the Avs put on that fourth line. And Jack Drury was a big part of that. But he was set to become a restricted free agent. One of the lone guys whose future in Colorado was in some doubt in terms of his contract. And I would imagine that Chris McFarland would like to make the Nashville Predators in the mold of the Colorado Avalanche if he can. So he's going to want that bottom six in Nashville to be good, to take pay extra attention and take more pride in who he puts on those lines. So I can certainly see it from the Preds perspective, from the Avs perspective. This is, again, about flexibility. If somebody came in with an offer sheet for Jack Drury, maybe it would price the Avalanche out and they lose him for nothing. The Avs don't have a ton of cap space. So this isn't, I don't say that this is a win for the Colorado Avalanche. I actually think it's a win for Chris McFarland. It almost seems like, I know this is not the way it is, but it almost seems that way. This is Joe Sakic like paying back Chris McFarland for Ross Colton. I think Ross Colton was a guy that the Avalanche for a couple years now desperately wanted to get off their books. Chris McFarland helps facilitate that to absorb his contract, and then Joe Sakic comes back and gives Chris McFarland a player that can anchor their fourth line. That, again, it's not a quid pro quo. I know that's not the case, but it just looks that way. Because the first trade they consummated, I looked at as a plus for the Avalanche. This one I look at as a plus for the Nashville Predators. At a certain level, right? Again, we're talking about bottom six players, prospects, and guys that have never panned out, and mid-round picks 3 years from now. So keep in mind what level we're talking about here. But this one, I think this is a good move for the Nashville Predators. And yes, losing Jack Drury is not an ideal situation for the Colorado Avalanche here, but don't forget the emergence of Gavin Brindley this year. Was kind of forced out of the playoff roster, but he was kind of one of the big revelations of the year. He can slot in. And don't forget Logan O'Connor. They had actually broken up that fourth line during the playoffs. You could put Logan O'Connor back down there as well if you so choose. So the Avalanche have options. But Jack Drury was really good in that spot. Really came on late in the season. I thought for a time that his spot on the playoff roster was in question, and he really came on late. Had a couple of moments there in the playoff run. So, again, like talking about the Nuggets in the draft, I don't think that the Avalanche are better making this move. But flexibility, right? That's flexibility and depth. Those are the two themes of this offseason for the Colorado Avalanche. It doesn't seem like they're going to make a splashy addition to this roster. They may make a splash in terms of who they deal, Valeri Nichushkin. But I don't think they're going to take on anyone where you go, whoa. But it's all for the sake of staying flexible, just in case, let's say, another Nazem Kadri type deal comes along at some point. So again, the particulars: Jack Drury, Chase Bradley, and a 2029 third-round pick going to our old buddy Chris McFarland, and the Avs will get back Zachary Leroux and Fedor Svechkov. Print the sweaters accordingly. Now, I was set to talk hockey in this segment before I saw that trade break, because did you see the move that the Chicago Blackhawks made last night? And this will be of local interest. Bo Byram is back in the Central Division. Buffalo traded him and Greenway for the fourth pick in the NHL draft. Not a fourth round pick, the fourth pick. Round 1, pick 4 is what Chicago gave up for Byram and Greenway. That raised some eyebrows, certainly across the hockey world. And the justification, I think, for Chicago to do this is that it is time with Connor Bedard for them to start to move in a direction where they're starting to win. Right? We saw Utah finally, after a few years of me thinking that they were the team to watch, the team that might make a jump and get into the playoffs, they finally did. Chicago needs to be that team now. So do you want, with all the draft picks they've already made, over the years, I think their thought was, let's just get, and by the way, they get 2 NHL defensemen. We focus on Byram, and he's the crown jewel of the trade. But they're getting 2 capable NHL blue liners to bring into a roster that they're done rebuilding. This signals that the Chicago Blackhawks are only going to be adding to their roster to try and compete for the playoffs. So I understand the reasoning behind it. But now creates the ultimate moment for Bo Byram. He has to fulfill the potential that the Avalanche saw in him. And you saw it. There were times where Bo Byram looked downright special. And you're like, we get 10 years of Cale Makar and Bo Byram. He had his moments, and you know why he wasn't consistent with it, right? Injuries were a major factor. Goes to Buffalo. I think he has success there this year, kind of at the end of his Buffalo tenure. But now he's the number 1 defenseman on the Chicago Blackhawks. So he's, he played on the same team as Cale Makar. He plays on the same team as Rasmus Dahlin. So he's at best, as well as he could have possibly played, he's still a distant second at best on the last 2 teams that he played for. That's not going to be the case with Chicago. He's going to be on the ice going against Connor McDavid, against Nathan McKinnon, against Jack Eichel. He's going to be the dude on that blue line for Chicago. So if there is ever a time for Bo Byram to finally maximize his talent and his potential, it's now. Because if this doesn't work out, then no one is going to look at Bo Byram as a top pairing defenseman. And he's never going to get that big deal that he seems to think he deserves. So this is the spot. This is Chicago saying we're going for it, and it being playoff contention or just moving the needle in that direction. Expectations still need to be pretty low with this team. But it's a sign that we're out of the draft business. We're adding NHL caliber players to try and move the needle, to try and give Connor Bedard help. And this is them betting on Bo Byram and putting Bo Byram in a spot where he's going to sink or swim. I hope he swims. I hope that Bo Byram really, I like Bo Byram a lot. And I thought it was a good move to trade Byram and give him a fresh start in Buffalo. And I thought that he started to show some signs there. So I hope that Bo Byram is exactly what the Chicago Blackhawks hope he will be. But this is the 4th pick in the draft. A draft with multiple defensemen that you look at and are like, these are NHL guys. Now, maybe the timeline, again, to my point, the timeline, they may not be ready. There's no Matthew Schaefer in this draft. These guys aren't stepping out onto the ice and being impact players year 1. But there are some guys that are going to be NHL defensemen for a very long time. So it wasn't like the draft ends at pick 3. Chicago could have gotten a really promising prospect. But they went with Bo Byram. And the Blackhawks general manager called him elite. I think he has elite talent. Have we seen an elite player yet? I don't know that we have. So Bo Byram back in the Central Division as a member of the Blackhawks, the Buffalo Sabres, getting the 4th overall pick. And how about, as much as last night was a snooze fest with the NBA draft, and I know that the knowledge of these prospects is not, with the NHL, is not nearly what it is with the NBA. But you've had the number 9 pick change hands multiple times in just the last few days. Now you got the 4th pick changing hands, and stay tuned to see what the number 2 pick, what happens with that. So there's a lot of movement. If you are a hockey fan and if you're into the draft, this draft is going to be quite interesting with the number of different teams that are now sitting near the top. So take your thoughts on all of the latest NHL moves. Jack Drury, now a member of the Predators. Bo Byram back in the division as a member of the Blackhawks. 719-24-7-1313. 719-247-1313, taking your thoughts on a few different stories that we have touched on today. The Avs moving Jack Drury to Nashville, and getting a couple of guys back that maybe not will be a part of the Avalanche roster this year. I saw a note from someone on social media saying they would need a waiver to go to the AHL, which means that the Avs, if they tried to get them to the AHL, could lose them. I don't know that either one of these guys, Joe Sakic, will lose a lot of sleep over. This is about controlling costs in a hard cap league. And as much as you would like to have Jack Drury, there was a chance that they could be priced out of it, the running for him, with him being a restricted free agent and losing him for nothing. Right? So at least you get some guys that you can get a look at and see if they might be a fit in the bottom six, but you have other options like Gavin Brindley is one that immediately comes to mind. And then there's the trade of a former Av, Bo Byram, back in the Central Division, now playing for the Chicago Blackhawks. Important context to the why of it all. I discussed the why for Chicago. The why for Buffalo is kind of interesting, considering this was a team on the rise. This is a team that made the playoffs and for the first time in forever and might be looking to take the next step towards Stanley Cup contention. Why would they part with Bo Byram? Whether he's a number one, number two, number three defenseman, he was a good player. Why would you move him? Chris, our resident Sabres fan, with the context that I believe to be true, Buffalo wanted to resign Byram, but he did not want to stay and be the number two defenseman behind, of course, Rasmus Dahlin. He wanted to be the number one. And so Bo Byram, and that's why I said this is the ultimate Bo Byram moment. Chicago is bringing you in because they feel like you're a number one defenseman. Bo Byram feels like he's a number one defenseman. Here we go. This is your moment, Bo Byram. And reportedly, he's going to be paid like a number one defenseman, not like a Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar number one defenseman, but 12.5 million per year, I think, is what he's going to get from Chicago, according to some reports. So he's going to be in the position of a number one defenseman. He's going to get paid like a number one defenseman. And again, I hope it works. I really do. I like Bo Byram a lot. But this is a big spot. And now you have the cloud, if you will, hanging over you that Chicago gave up the fourth overall pick in a draft for you. Coincidentally, what pick was Bo Byram taken? 4. So 2 teams have used fourth overall picks on Bo Byram. The Avs and now the Chicago Blackhawks. Brett says, dope goal. Yeah, I referred to Jack Drury's goal as a dope goal. Says, Ryan, you're almost 60 years old. Okay. First of all, if I was 60, I could say dope when I'm 60. And by the way, I'm not even close to 60. I feel like I'm older than 60, but I'm 41. So how dare you? I'm an old 41, but I am 41. And I can say dope. Brett adds, Ryan, Stan Kroenke is a great sports team owner if you're a Los Angeles Rams fan. Or an Arsenal fan. The 2 properties he has in at Ball Arena, one, it doesn't seem like he's too heavily involved in, kind of leaves them alone. And the other, he takes an active interest in, or at least his son takes an active interest, and it's not going well since they hoisted the Larry O'Brien trophy. To that end, with the Denver Nuggets, Albert says 2 more seasons of this from the Nuggets, and the Joker will be in L.A. playing with the Lakers. And if you hear me read that, you might go, oh, come on now. Albert's just trying to prod Nuggets fans. We know what Nikola Jokic is. He doesn't want to go anywhere. Well, Nikola Jokic is playing in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers. I believe that's the competition that he's getting ready to play in for Serbia. He had some comments that I won't play the audio because it was all in his native language, so it wouldn't do any good. I would have to translate. Here's the translation of what Nikola Jokic said. As for my team, being the Nuggets, we were eliminated in the first round. Some say maybe we could have done more. Some say we could have done better. But when someone beats you in a playoff series, I think that team is better than you. If we could have won, we would have won. And this is a continuation of the conversation that he started when the Nuggets were eliminated. When he was asked how close the Nuggets are to winning another championship. And he says, we lost in the first round, so obviously we're not close. This is as close to Giannis, LeBron, and all these other stars that ask out or passive-aggressively ask out. This is as close to that as you are ever going to get from Nikola Jokic. And it's more than we used to have. So, yes, maybe Albert is trying to strike a nerve with Nuggets fans. But we have heard more of Nikola Jokic talking about just how far away the Nuggets are in the last 2 months than we have had in the entirety of his career. This is Nikola Jokic getting agitated. Now, he has the most patience of any superstar, maybe in sports. And I can certainly say that with what's going on in the NHL right now. He has the most patience. And I don't think this means the next step is Nikola Jokic demands a trade. But this, to me, is a sign that Nikola Jokic is kind of getting over all of this. This guy, you know very well his pursuits outside of the game of basketball. You understand that he spends his off seasons in his native country. This guy is not wanting to continue to come back across the pond to Denver every year for the next decade and continuously getting bounced in the first round. Nikola Jokic is a competitor. Despite what all the jokes of, this being his 9 to 5 and stuff will tell you. He's a competitor, a big competitor. He's getting tired of this. It's not, we're not threat level midnight here when it comes to Nikola Jokic in Denver, but this is him showing more agitation and more frustration over what has happened since the Nuggets won the title than we've ever seen from or heard from Nikola Jokic. And by the way, this is great. I want more of it. I want him to put more pressure on the organization. Welcome in. Thanks for stopping by, whether you're listening to the show, Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or their streaming apps, or you're watching the show on social media. Anywhere you scroll, really. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We are on X, and we are on Twitch. So at Extra Sports 1300, probably the easiest way to find the show. But if you follow me at GingerWatch on Instagram, at Gingerly Tweets on X, you can also find the show there as well. If you'd like to take your participation in today's show to the next level, which I highly recommend that you do, you could call or text in the show at 719-247-1313. Or if you are watching the aforementioned live stream of the show, you can simply drop a comment right where you are at. In a thing that I never really understood, except I know that the answer to everything is money, the NBA will have the second round of the NBA draft tonight. As if last night wasn't boring enough, here come a whole round of guys you've never heard of. And I mean from a general standpoint. Some of you may know. Braden Smith, I mentioned him last hour, all-time NCAA leader in assists. Like, when he goes off the board, you're going to be like, I know that guy. But snooze fest last night, and now you basically don't know any of these guys. Nuggets have 2 picks. And I have seen reports that they are willing to move both. Just like last night when they drafted Taron Reed and then immediately traded him to San Antonio for the 35th pick and 2 second-round picks. So the Nuggets appear to be looking to not draft anybody, which might be a nice change of pace for the Denver Nuggets, right? The Calvin Booth era was all about drafting and developing, and there was a fair amount of drafting and very little developing. So you may be like, you know what? It doesn't bother me that they're not drafting anybody, given where they were at, right? 26, now they're at 35 and 49. I think you understand that the chances of them landing an impact player. Yes, Nikola Jokic, Taco Bell commercial. I remember all of that stuff. Tom Brady. Also, did you know that Tom Brady, not a first-round pick, famously? Like, yeah, we can hold up these examples to cling to hope, or we could be realists and say that's a once-in-a-lifetime get, and it's never going to happen again. Or at least not happen for a very, 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 very long time. And no, Brock Purdy is not just like Tom Brady. So it might be okay that the Denver Nuggets don't draft anybody, except if they're going to go through with their cost-cutting measures, right? And they're just looking to dump Christian Brown on somebody and get rid of Cam Johnson. Let's even say that they do that and they re-sign Peyton Watson. Well, Jonas Valanciunas is probably out. We don't know what the status of Tim Hardaway Jr. is. So if this team is truly looking to shed payroll above everything else, wouldn't it make sense to actually stay where you're at and draft guys? Because you're going to need players. You got to put together a roster when all is said and done. Now, I'm not saying I would chalk it more up to the Denver Nuggets just really don't see value in any of these guys left on the board, rather than what we all thought the Nuggets' plan was this offseason is now suddenly not true. I'm not going to – I think it's far more the former, in that the Nuggets just don't feel like these guys are going to be able to help them in any way, shape, or form. And they'd rather look to the veteran market, which I think you could see the logic of. I don't think that this is an endorsement or a sign that the Nuggets are going to run it back and then add. Right? They're still going to have to figure out how to fill out all 14 roster spots. But they want to choose to do it in a different way. And if you don't like the guys on the board, you don't like the guys on the board. I'd much rather that be the reality instead of them trying to cram Jalen Pickett, the idea of Jalen Pickett down our throats. So if the Nuggets want to move off of their 2 picks tonight and get future second-round picks, fine. But what are you going to do with those second-round picks? And what are you going to do with Cam Johnson and Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray and Peyton Watson and Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway Jr., like the entire roster, as stated by Josh Kroenke, is in a bit of flux other than Nikola Jokic. And we're no closer to knowing the fate of any of those players one night after the first round of the NBA draft. So if you want to still cling to some hope that the Nuggets aren't going to further commit franchise malpractice, and they are legitimately looking to improve this roster in a real way, I wonder what that's going to look like. Because it does seem like the noise has gotten louder since Giannis got traded, but we haven't seen a lot happen. Now the latest destination for Jaylen Brown might be Cleveland in a Jaylen Brown for Evan Mobley swap, which, for the record, I'd be a fan of for both teams. I think that would be a win-win, and Evan Mobley could basically be a straight-up swap and accomplish the same goal as you were trying to accomplish by trading for Giannis, and it won't cost you nearly as much. So I think that's a pretty good plan B from Brad Stevens, if that turns out to be the case. And Cleveland just needs to – they're one of those teams like the Denver Nuggets that they got to be different. They tried it a certain way. It hasn't worked. It's never going to work. You got to do something. But doing what – if this comes to fruition, that's the kind of trade that the Nuggets should be looking at. Right now, you're not going to be able to probably get a player of Jaylen Brown's caliber by trading any one player. But the thought process behind it is what I've been saying the Nuggets need to have since the season ended. The goal has to be to build this team differently. And simply shedding salary and keeping the same core of players doesn't accomplish that. And even if you're going to basically run it back and then add a couple of vet players, kind of like you did last year with Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway, I don't know that that's actually going to get you that much closer to winning a title. I really only see this as one path forward for the Denver Nuggets. And that's taking something of value that other teams covet and getting back in return a player or players that are going to make you a different basketball team fundamentally. Getting to the rim and protecting the rim. Whether that's out on the perimeter protecting the rim or at the rim protecting the rim. Those are the type of players that the Nuggets have in short supply, and even shorter supply if they can't figure it out with Peyton Watson. But those are the kind of players that they want. So Cleveland, if there's something real behind this Brown for Mobley swap, that's the right thinking from Cleveland. And it's the kind of thinking that the Nuggets should have. But again, we don't know. We don't know. Last night gave no clues as to which direction the Denver Nuggets are going to go. And so we wait another night here. Second round of the NBA draft for you sickos out there, and I mean that as a term of endearment, because I love the draft in every sport. That comes up at 6 o'clock. Nuggets on the clock with 35 and 49, but reportedly looking to move both. There is something else that has happened in the last 24 hours, and it's part of a growing trend. So Derek White was named the Chief Officer of Strategy, Basketball Strategy, Chief Basketball Strategy Officer, was named this very made-up position in the Colorado athletic program, specifically around Tad Boyle's basketball team. And this is a growing trend. Last week, Desmond Bane became something similar to that for TCU. This is not a position of real substance in terms of the basketball side of this. Tad Boyle is not sending Derek White out on recruiting trips necessarily. Like, that's not going to be part of this thing. Derek White, as you know, has a day job that runs counter to the Buffs' basketball schedule. So you'll get cheerleaders out there in the media and amongst the fan base that are talking about, throwing around words like transformational and how big of a get these are. I think chill a little bit here. What this is it's some star power to help you close business, the business of NIL. That's more than anything else. That's what it looks like. Sure, Derek White might come in and make a few team talks. But in the world of NIL, you need as many big guns as you can get. And an alum who's an NBA champion, pretty good guy to have shake hands with some deep-pocketed donors. And that's the way I look at it. For Derek White, for Desmond Bane, I think Steph Curry is doing the same thing at Davidson. These are not program-altering moves. I can't get to that level of hope for a college basketball program. But it doesn't hurt to have a guy that has achieved the ultimate prize in basketball to be able to hop on a call with the CU donor and say, hey, support this program. And yeah, maybe Derek White will be involved in some recruiting. They got a high-level recruit. Maybe he could be a closer and come in and tell a star basketball player in high school, like, CU's a good place for you to go. It's not game-changing. It's not transformational. It's not life-altering. But there is a value. There is a utility to these positions. And what it is an indicator of is in the world of NIL, especially basketball, because those, you're not having to spread that money out through a huge roster like you do in football. There are guys that are going to get a ton of money and are getting a ton of money to play basketball because that's how much of a difference one player can make. And you need all hands on deck. You need any willing and able-bodied person that can extol the virtues of your basketball program and your institution to help you, because every dollar matters. And what I think the biggest positive of these things are, and I'll put it through the lens of Derek White and CU, it's great to see alumni with an actual platform, with some brand recognition, with some name recognition, rallying behind their program. Right? It is cool to see Desmond Bane do that for TCU and Steph Curry do that for Davidson, and now Derek White doing it for CU. Understanding, and even Derek White said in his press conference that he doesn't know much about the landscape of college basketball. And what he didn't say, but could have very well said, was, but I know they need my help, because everybody's scratching and clawing for NIL money. And if Derek White helps them raise more money, then it's worth it. I just don't think that, I'm sorry, I don't think that Derek White is the difference between CU being what they are now and being the premium program in the Big 12. I can't make that leap. But this is a dogfight. You got to pull out all the stops. You got to bring in all the heavy hitters, all the big guns that you could possibly bring out. Maybe Deion Sanders, the CU basically has one of these guys as their football coach. That's what Deion Sanders is. I mean, look at his impact. I mean, let's look at it a couple years in. What's the impact that Deion Sanders has made? Wins and losses? Not really. So they got one for football. I was going to say, like Chris Fowler or something might be a good guy to involve in the program. But Deion Sanders kind of does it with his all-star cast of coaches that all played in the NFL. Now basketball needs that. And who better than Derek White? I can think of another point guard that maybe would be even better, but he is currently involved with some legal struggles at the moment. But good to see, CU was good for Derek White. Absolutely. As much as his journey started just down the road from me at UCCS, and even Derek White said it's had a special place in his basketball career, UCCS. CU took a chance on this guy and elevated his status. So it is a good thing that Derek White hasn't forgotten that, and he's trying to give back to the program. We don't have to get carried away with his impact. It's just nice to see an alum say, I care enough about this place to help, even if I'm not the ultimate difference maker, the be all end all. I just want to help. That's what this is, with him taking this position within the college basketball program up in Boulder. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Christian Pulisic. Is he playing or not tomorrow? And I mean that on a couple of different levels. Is he available? And then if he is, will he actually play against Turkey? That and Pulisic might be coming home to America to play for a club team in the United States. Get into that as well here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tonight, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC hosting San Antonio FC. Roland and I will be on the call on Extra Sports 1300 at 5:30. It is a 6 o'clock kick. If you're heading out to the match, hopefully I'll see you there. Big one tonight. A little bit lighter schedule in the month of July. Got to maximize each match if you're the Switchbacks. Again, that our coverage will start at 5:30 with kickoff at 6 on Extra Sports 1300. Speaking of the World's Game, tomorrow the U.S. finishes up the group stage without anything on the line. As they have already clinched the group, we now know that they will be playing Bosnia-Herzegovina in the round of 32. That was the there were a couple of times where Ecuador snuck in there, but for a long time, it has been Bosnia that was the most likely round of 32 opponent. That will be the case. That game in Santa Clara on July 1st. But still got to get through tomorrow. And the big question for that match is whether Christian Pulisic is healthy enough to play, which he said today he is, and told Jenny Taft of Fox Sports that yesterday he felt close to 100%. Today he felt 100%, which is big picture, great news, right? However far this team is going to go, they're not going to get there without Christian Pulisic. Now, the second question, will he play? We saw him for one half of the first game. I think you need to get Christian Pulisic out there and get him back, rounding back into form. I don't think it's going to take a lot for a player like him, but I think he should play. Now, the question is, how many minutes do the team doctors and Mauricio Pochettino think he's capable of playing? Do you want to start him and play him an hour, or do you want to bring him on and play him 30 minutes? I start him. That's kind of where I'm at. I think he should play either way. If he comes off the bench, so be it, but I start him. Because the secondary goal here, other than, getting him back up to speed and making an impact, is and I've been saying it, I don't want this team to lose its edge. I don't want this team to drop this match because it's meaningless, because we just don't know if this team can turn it back on. We have been surprised, I think, to this point on how good this team is. So maybe they are capable. I'm just saying we're in the World Cup right now. I don't want to chance it. I want this team to keep the foot on the gas, even if it's a very different looking lineup. Having somebody like Christian Pulisic out there, I think, bolsters the group and gives them a chance to finish the group stage perfect. And this team does want to win this third match. They're not saying job is finished and on to the next. Max Arfston, who may very well be in the starting 11 tomorrow, on why this team still wants to win, even though no matter the result, they still know their fate for the knockout round.
Just momentum, to be honest with you. You don't want to go into a knockout round having like a bad feeling of how the last game went. So although we have advanced, I don't think it changes anything in terms of preparation or mentality. So I just think it's very important to try and continue to ride the wave of good performance.
And I 100% agree. That's what I've been saying. This isn't the 17th game of the season like in the NFL. They've played twice, and they've looked overall very good. but they're been far from perfect. I want them continuing to work on things. So it's going to be a different looking 11. And look, I said this yesterday, a lot of the decisions for Mauricio Pochettino are going to be made. He's got 4 guys on yellow cards. He can't play any of those guys. So his back line is going to look very different. Balogun's one of the players on a yellow. So is Tyler Adams. So the spine of this team, other than really Matt Freese, is going to be very different. But you could still, Gio Reyna could play some valuable minutes. Seb Berhalter, Ricardo Pepi. So it's not going to be US's JV tomorrow, nor should it be. It's a mix. It's naturally going to look different, but I want a competitive team out there that's still capable of taking all 3 points. And we'll see what Mauricio Pochettino decides as far as when we see Christian Pulisic, if at all. Now, there's a rumor going around about Christian Pulisic's future. It's being reported in Italy, where he currently plays his club ball, that New York City FC of MLS is getting ready to offer him $10 million a year to come back home to the United States and play for them. And this is the perfect thing for MLS to capitalize on what is going on. I finished reading a book. I know, hold your applause, please. Called The Messi Effect. That was talking about Messi's impact, obviously, on MLS, but it's also about looking forward. Right? So all those years ago, you have David Beckham, and now you have Lionel Messi, which has created some momentum. And now you got the deal with Apple, and there's Ted Lasso, and there's all this stuff that is growing the game in the United States. But then you have the World Cup. And more importantly, you have after the World Cup. We're all getting swept up in this now. What are we going to do when this tournament is over? Where are we going to go for our soccer? Because it's still the easiest and best way to do it is to look to the leagues that are here. Right? I know it's more available than ever to watch the Premier League and La Liga and all these kind of things, but I think a lot of people who are getting into the World Cup would very much like to watch soccer in America once the World Cup is over. And so what if people start to go to MLS, and I'll include the USL Championship in this as well. Aloy Room, the Miami FC goalkeeper that was starring for Curacao the other day. Like, it's all the leagues in America. But talking about MLS, people are going to say, okay, where's my soccer options in the United States once the World Cup is over? Oh, here's MLS. Well, why should I get into it? One of the stars of the World Cup, what we hope one of the stars of the World Cup for America, and Christian Pulisic is going to be playing for New York City FC. Lionel Messi is playing for Miami. Some of the people that it's important for MLS. They can't get all of them, but it's important for MLS to get as many of the guys that you are seeing star in the World Cup in their league immediately as they can get. And there's no bigger get. I know Balogun and some of these other guys, really Balogun is starting to rival Christian Pulisic just because Pulisic's been out and Balogun's been the star. They're not going to be able to get everybody. But if you can, and it's a single entity model in MLS. So this is the whole league. Yeah, New York City FC is going to be the team that will have him on their roster. But it's their whole thing is a rising tide raises all boats. Messi went to Miami, and you may say, well, it's like Giannis going to the Heat. They get Giannis, you don't. In MLS, it's a different thinking. When Inter Miami got Lionel Messi, the Major League Soccer got Lionel Messi. Everybody benefited. And Pulisic can have that kind of an impact as well, coming off of what we hope will be a deep and fruitful run in the World Cup. And those of us who support our leagues here in America, MLS, USL Championship, hope that this creates momentum. But I understand that there has to be, without the stakes of the World Cup, there has to be a reason to keep people into soccer, and having the biggest name on the U.S. men's national team moving to MLS would be pretty good move. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but 10 mil to play in New York City, I think it's going to be hard for Christian Pulisic to turn that down. More Drive Time Sports after this.